Welcome to another story written by Oracle 1. The Echoes of the Dead of the Lonely Farmhouse. Chapter 1. The farmhouse stood alone in a field that seemed too wide for the world around it. Miles of empty land stretched in every direction, the soil dry and cracked despite the recent rain, as though the ground refused to hold water for long. The road that led to it narrowed into little more than two faint tire tracks before vanishing entirely a few yards from the porch. No neighbors, no fences, no sound, except the wind. Elias Mercer killed the engine of his truck and sat in silence. The ticking of cooling metal filled the cab, sharp and uneven in the stillness. He rested his hands on the steering wheel a moment longer than necessary, staring at the farmhouse through the dust-streaked windshield. It looked abandoned, not recently, long enough for the paint to peel into long, curling strips, for the wood of the porch to sag slightly under its own weight. One of the upstairs windows hung half open, tapping faintly against the frame whenever the wind shifted. He exhaled slowly. "This is the place," he muttered. The letter had been clear. No signature. No return address. Just a set of directions and a single sentence written in careful, uneven handwriting. "You can hear them if you stay long enough." Elias didn't believe in things like that. He believed in acoustics, in structural echoes, in the way sound could behave unpredictably in old buildings, lingering longer than it should, bending through spaces in ways that created the illusion of voices where none existed. He had built his career on explaining those illusions, debunking them, proving that what people feared had explanations. That this would be any different never crossed his mind. He grabbed his bag and stepped out of the truck. The air was still, not quiet, still. The wind that had been moving across the fields moments before seemed to thin out near the house, as though something about the space resisted it. Elias walked toward the porch. The wood creaked under his weight, each step producing a dull, hollow sound that lingered just a fraction too long. Echo. He paused, listened. The sound faded slowly. Perfectly normal. He nodded to himself and reached for the door. It opened without resistance. The interior smelled of dust and something faintly sour, old wood, damp fabric, and something beneath it that he couldn't immediately place. The entryway led into a narrow hallway. Bare walls. Faded wallpaper peeling at the edges. A coat rack stood to one side, empty except for a single long coat that hung unnaturally still, untouched by the faint draft that slipped through the open door behind him. Elias stepped inside. The floorboards creaked again, echoing. He closed the door. The sound it made didn't match. It was too sharp. Too close. As though the echo came back faster than it should have. Elias frowned. "That's odd," he murmured. He set his bag down and pulled out a small recorder, switching it on. The device hummed softly, the red light blinking steadily. "Elias Mercer," he said. "Initial entry. Farmhouse structure appears intact. Acoustic environment." The recorder crackled. A brief burst of static interrupted him. Then, something else. Intact. Elias froze. The word came back to him. But wrong. Not delayed. Not properly distorted. Clear. Too clear. He stared at the recorder. "That's not," he began. The hallway behind him creaked. A soft, deliberate sound. Like a step. Elias turned sharply. The space was empty. The coat on the rack remained still. The walls unchanged. He waited, listened. Nothing. He exhaled slowly. "Old wood," he said under his breath. Settling. He moved further into the house. The hallway opened into a larger room, a living area, judging by the arrangement of furniture. A worn sofa sat against one wall, its fabric faded and sagging. A wooden table stood in the center, one leg slightly shorter than the others, causing it to tilt at an angle. Dust covered everything, undisturbed, except the floor. There were faint marks, not footprints, not exactly, More like scuffs. Irregular. As though something had been dragged across the boards repeatedly. Elias crouched slightly, examining them. Animals, maybe, he muttered. But there were no claw marks. No clear pattern. Just movement. Repeated. He stood again. The air felt thicker here. Heavier. Sound carried differently. He tested it. Clapped his hands once. The echo returned, but not as a single reflection. Multiple. Layered. Each one slightly offset. Clap. 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 Too many. Elias's brow furrowed. That's interesting, he said. He clapped again. The echoes returned, but this time, one came back out of sequence. Delayed. Clap. Elias's breath caught. He hadn't said anything. He lowered his hands slowly. The room settled into silence. Then, a whisper. Faint. Barely audible. Stay. Elias turned sharply. Who's there? He called. The word bounced off the walls. Returned. Normal. Except, one echo lingered. There. Too long. Too close. Elias's chest tightened. This is a recording, he said aloud. Someone left something here. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. He moved toward the far side of the room, scanning for speakers, wires, anything that might explain the sound. There was nothing. Just walls. Furniture. Dust. The recorder in his hand crackled again. Elias glanced down at it. The waveform spiked erratically, picking up something. He hadn't spoken. The air was silent, but the device was recording. Long enough. The words played back softly. Not from the house. From the recorder. Elias's grip tightened. That's from the letter, he whispered. The device crackled again. Stay long enough. His stomach dropped. He hadn't said that out loud. Not since reading it. Not here. The room creaked. A slow, deliberate shift in the structure. Then, footsteps. Clear. Measured. Moving across the floor behind him. Elias turned. Nothing. But the sound continued. Crossing the room. Stopping just a few feet away. He didn't breathe. Didn't move. The silence that followed pressed in around him. Then, a voice. Right beside him. Soft. Close. You hear us now? Elias's heart slammed against his ribs. He spun around. The room was empty. But the echo didn't fade. It lingered. Breathing. Waiting. As if the house had finally found something worth repeating. Chapter 2. The echo did not fade. It lingered in the air beside him, not as sound, but as presence. As if the voice had weight, shape, and had chosen not to leave. Elias stood frozen, the recorder trembling slightly in his hand. You hear us now? The words repeated. Not from the room. From the device. He looked down slowly. The waveform pulsed again. Spiking. Recording something that no longer existed. That's not possible, he whispered. The recorder crackled. Possible? The reply came immediately. Too quickly to be an echo. Too clear to be distortion. Elias's throat tightened. Okay, he said, forcing steadiness into his voice. Acoustic feedback loop. Layered reflections. The structures causing. The recorder repeated it again. Not delayed. Not distorted. Correct. Perfect. As if something understood the word. And chose to give it back. Elias lowered the device. The room felt smaller now. The walls closer. Not physically. But in attention. Listening. He took a slow step backward. The floor creaked. Back. The word came from behind him. He spun. The sound had not come from the recorder this time. It had come from the hallway. Faint, but unmistakable. Elias stared into the darkness of the corridor. The coat still hung on the rack. Unmoving, but the air around it seemed disturbed, as if something had just passed through. No, Elias said quietly. No, this isn't real. Real? The reply came from the living room. Behind him. He turned again. Nothing, but the space felt different. Occupied. The scuff marks on the floor seemed more pronounced now. Deeper. Fresh. Elias crouched again, examining them. They weren't random. Not anymore. They curved, repeated, looping patterns. Paths. Paths. The word brushed past his ear. Close. Too close. Elias jerked upright. "Stop," he said sharply. Silence. For a moment, nothing answered. Then, "Stop." Soft. From everywhere. Layered. Whispered from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Repeating him. Not mimicking. Learning. The realization settled into him slowly. This wasn't just echo. It wasn't passive. It was selective. Intentional. "You're not reflecting sound," he said. His voice felt small. "Sound. You're choosing it." The room creaked. A slow, deliberate shift. Choosing. The word stretched. Distorted slightly. As if testing itself. Elias's pulse quickened. "What are you?" he asked. Silence. Longer this time. He almost believed it had stopped. Then, "What are you?" The words came back, but not as an echo. Not in his voice. Different. Lower. Older. The tone carried weight. Memory. Elias felt his chest tighten. "That's not me," he whispered. "Not me." The reply came instantly. Closer. Right beside his ear. He flinched. The recorder in his hand squealed briefly, feedback spiking before cutting out. He looked down. The device was still recording. But now, there were multiple tracks. Layered waveforms overlapping each other. Some small, some sharp, some long, continuous, as if something was speaking constantly, even when the room was silent. "We are." The words bled through the speaker. Not fully formed. Fragmented. Elias's breath slowed. "We are what?" he asked. The house answered. Not with a single voice. But many. "Left. Here. Stay. Listen." The words overlapped, colliding into each other. Incomplete. Disjointed. Elias backed toward the doorway. The hallway felt darker now. The light dimmer. As if the house itself resisted clarity. "Your recordings," he said. Residual energy. Voices trapped in the structure. Trapped, trapped, trapped? The word echoed again and again, each repetition slightly different. Some whispered, some strained, some breaking. Elias swallowed. "Then you're not aware," he said. "You're just aware?" The interruption came sharp. Immediate. The air shifted. Cold. "You're not alone," Elias said, louder now. "There has to be a source. A device. Something projecting this." The floor creaked loudly behind him. A single step. Clear. Elias turned slowly. The living room remained empty. But the scuff marks. They had changed. A new line dragged across the floor. Fresh. Leading toward him. His breath caught. "That wasn't there," he whispered. "There." The word came from the hallway. Ahead of him. Not behind. Not beside. Ahead. Elias turned toward it. The corridor stretched out, unchanged. Except for one thing. The coat on the rack. It swayed. Gently. Back and forth. Though the air was still. Elias stared at it. The movement was subtle. Rhythmic. Almost. Breathing. "No," he said under his breath. The recorder hissed. "No." A second voice layered over it. "Don't go." Elias froze. The words came from the hallway. Clear. Not repeated. Not echoed. Spoken. His chest tightened. "Who said that?" he demanded. Silence. Then, "Who said that?" Mocking. But weaker. Less precise. As if whatever had spoken first had done so with more control. Elias stepped toward the hallway despite himself. The floor creaked beneath him. The coat swayed more noticeably now. Its fabric shifting slightly, though nothing touched it. Closer. The word drifted from somewhere deeper in the house. Elias's breathing became shallow. "You want me to come in there," he said. Want? The word fractured, repeating unevenly. The house didn't answer directly. It never did. It only gave back what it chose. Elias reached the threshold of the hallway. The air here was colder. Sharper. Each breath stung his throat. The doors along the corridor remained closed, unchanged, but the silence between them wasn't empty. It hummed faintly, low, continuous. He took a step inside. The floor groaned. Inside, the word came from behind him. Elias turned. The living room looked further away. The space stretched. The doorway elongated. That wasn't possible. His heart pounded. That's not possible. The hallway whispered it before he could finish. Elias's stomach dropped. It was anticipating him now. Not just repeating. Not just reacting. It knew. The coat snapped suddenly. Not falling. Not tearing. Just stopping. Mid-sway. Perfectly still. The air froze with it. And from beneath the fabric, something shifted. A shape. Subtle. Pressing outward. As if something stood inside it. Elias took a step back. Stay. The word came urgently now. Different from before. Strained. Don't leave. Another voice layered over it. Desperate. Please. Elias's chest tightened. These weren't just echoes. They weren't random fragments. They were voices. Separated. Trapped. Trying. The coat moved again. But not swaying this time. Turning. Slowly. Toward him. Elias couldn't breathe. The fabric twisted unnaturally, as if guided by something within. Then, it stopped. Facing him. Empty sleeves hanging at its sides. You hear us now? The same voice from before. Closer. Stronger. Elias's grip tightened on the recorder. What do you want? He whispered. The silence stretched. Long. Heavy. Then, all at once, the house answered. Out, out, out? The word repeated again and again, overlapping, desperate. Elias's pulse raced. Out of where? He asked. The recorder crackled violently. The waveforms spiked. And then, the answer came. Clear. Singular. Not layered. Not broken. From right inside the coat. You. Chapter 3. The word did not echo. It remained, hanging in the air between Elias and the coat like something that refused to return to silence. You. Elias stood frozen in the hallway, the recorder trembling in his hand, the red light blinking steadily as if nothing had changed. But everything had. You, he repeated quietly. The coat did not move. Not outwardly, but the shape beneath it shifted. Subtle. Breathing. Elias's chest tightened. You're inside me? He asked. The house responded. Not immediately. The silence stretched long enough to feel deliberate. Then, inside, inside, inside. The word layered, fractured, circling him from every direction. Elias shook his head. No, he said. That's not what you mean. The recorder crackled. Mean? The repetition faltered. Uncertain. As if the word did not belong. Elias swallowed. You said, out, he continued. You want to get out. Out. The word came back stronger. Sharper. Out. Elias's pulse quickened. Out of me? The hallway creaked. A slow, stretching sound that ran through the walls, the floor, the ceiling. The coat jerked slightly. A sudden, unnatural movement. Then stilled again. Out. The voice came again. Closer. Focused. Not layered. Elias stared at the coat. At the empty sleeves. At the space where something pressed from within. You're not in the coat, he whispered. The realization settled cold and heavy. The coat was just showing him a shape, a form, a place to look, but not where it was. Elias's grip tightened around the recorder. He lifted it slowly. The speaker crackled. The waveform pulsed violently, not from external sound, but from within the device itself. Here? Elias's breath caught. No, he whispered. The voices. They weren't coming from the house anymore. They were coming from the recorder. From the space between sounds. From the gaps. You're not trapped here, he said slowly. Trapped? The word fractured, weakening. Not in the walls, he continued. Walls. and not in the objects. The coat behind him sagged suddenly, collapsing inward, empty, lifeless. Elias didn't turn. He didn't need to. "You're in the echoes," he said. The recorder shrieked, a burst of feedback so sharp it made him flinch. Then, silence. Total. Complete. For the first time since he entered the house. There was no sound, no creaking, no whisper, no echo. Elias stood still, listening. Nothing came back. He exhaled slowly. "I understand," he said. The words fell flat, dead. No repetition, no response. A heavy dread settled into his chest. "They're not trapped," he whispered. "They're replacing." The silence broke, not with sound, but with absence. The house swallowed the quiet itself. And then, all at once, every sound returned, explosively. Replacing, replacing, replacing? The voices screamed it, layered, overlapping, no longer fragmented, no longer weak, clear. Dozens, hundreds. Elias staggered back, clutching his head. The recorder shrieked uncontrollably, the waveform maxing out, unable to contain the volume of what it was capturing. "You're not echoes," he shouted. "Not echoes." The reply came instantly, mocking, perfect. "You're recordings," he said. "Recordings? You're copies, copies?" The voices surged, closer, louder. "You're not the dead," Elias shouted. "You're what's left after them." The house groaned, a deep, structural sound that rippled through every surface. The walls trembled, the floor shifted, and for a moment, Elias heard something else. Not voices, not echoes. Breathing, heavy, labored, struggling. "Help." The word cut through the noise. Different, weaker, real. Elias froze. "That one," he said. "That one's not like the others." The voices faltered, just for a second. "Help." It came again. From deeper. From beneath. From everywhere at once. "They're still here," Elias whispered. "They're still inside." The realization hit hard. The echoes. The copies. They weren't just remnants. They were layers. Built on top of something that hadn't been allowed to leave. "You're keeping them," he said. The voices surged violently. "Keeping, keeping, keeping? You're trapping them here," Elias continued. "Trapping, trapping?" The word distorted, breaking. "You don't want to get out," he said. The silence slammed into the room. Sudden, violent. "You want me to stay." The house shifted. The walls creaked. The hallway stretched. Just slightly. "Enough. You need something alive," Elias whispered. "Alive? And when I speak," the recorder crackled. "Speak. You copy me." "Copy?" His breath slowed. His thoughts sharpened. "And when I leave," the voices answered before he could finish. "Leave, leave, leave?" Desperate. Fractured. Afraid. Elias's chest tightened. "You lose the source." The silence that followed was heavier than anything before. Then, soft, quiet, almost gentle. "Stay." The word drifted through the house. Not layered, not broken, singular. Elias closed his eyes briefly. Then opened them. "No," he said. The house reacted instantly. The hallway warped. The walls bending inward, the distance stretching and collapsing at once. The floor groaned loudly beneath him. "Stay." The word repeated, stronger now, more urgent. "No," Elias said again, louder. The voices rose. "Stay, stay, stay?" He turned and ran. The hallway shifted with every step, doors sliding past him in impossible angles, the floor pulling against his feet as if resisting his movement. The living room stretched ahead, further than before, but visible, reachable. The voices screamed behind him. Not whispers anymore, not echoes. A chorus. Desperate, angry. "Stay." Elias pushed forward. The doorway rushed toward him. Then snapped back, further away. "No," he shouted. The recorder in his hand crackled violently. The waveform spiked, then flattened. The sound cut out. Total silence. Elias stumbled, And suddenly, he was standing in the living room. Perfectly still. Perfectly quiet. The hallway behind him. Gone. The space normal again. Unchanged. The front door stood ahead. Closed. But closer now. Elias stared at it. His breath came slow. Controlled. He stepped forward. The floor creaked. Once. No echo. He stopped. Waited. Nothing came back. No voice. No whisper. No repetition. The house was silent. Elias took another step. Then another. He reached the door. Placed his hand on the handle. Hesitated. The silence pressed in around him. Too complete. Too perfect. He swallowed. Then pulled the door open. The wind rushed in immediately. Cold. Sharp. Real. The field stretched out before him. Empty. Unchanged. Elias stepped outside. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the sound returned. Elias? He froze. Slowly. He turned his head. The house stood behind him. Still. Silent. The doorway open. Dark. Elias? The voice came again. Not from inside. From behind him. Elias's chest tightened. He turned. The field was empty. The wind moved through the dry grass. Nothing else. Elias? Closer now. Right beside him. Elias's breath caught. That's not possible, he whispered. Possible? The reply came instantly. Perfectly. Elias's stomach dropped. No, he said slowly. His voice felt wrong. Too clear. Too precise. Too repeatable. No. The echo came back. Not from the house. From the air around him. From the space he occupied. Elias stood very still, listening. His heartbeat slowed. His breathing steadied. And then, he understood. The house hadn't let him go. It had moved. Or rather, it no longer needed to stay in one place. Elias took a slow breath. Breath. The word came back. Perfect. Immediate. He closed his eyes. And spoke again. Stay. Stay. The echo answered. Closer. Stronger. Aligned. Elias opened his eyes. The empty field stretched endlessly before him. Silent. Waiting. And somewhere within that silence, his voice remained. Repeating. Learning. Expanding. No longer trapped in walls. No longer bound to a place. Carried outward. Into the open world. Into every space where sound could exist. The farmhouse stood alone behind him. Empty. Quiet. Its echoes gone. Because they had finally found something better to become. For more stories, like and subscribe.